Mundo on KCMO Talk Radio.
Well, for the first time in American history, we have seen a Speaker of the House get fired. Of course, last night, Kevin McCarthy ousted as Speaker of the House. And now the question is, where does any of this go from here? Let's welcome on and say good morning to Ron Estes, Kansas 4th District Congressman, covers the entire Wichita area, joining us on KCMO. First off, Congressman, good morning. Thanks for being here. And how surprised are you? We always knew this was possible, but how surprised are you this actually happened?
Good morning, Pete. Thanks for having me on. It was kind of one of those things. We always had a slim majority, the Republicans in this session of Congress, with only five votes could change any issue that came up, and so this has been out there, has been talked about since January, and maybe even before, and so we knew this was always possible. It still is. It's disruptive that it actually came to pass to happen. I mean, I think a lot of your listeners probably have the same concerns I do, that we've got $33 trillion in debt and our borders wide open with thousands of migrants crossing illegally every day, and gas and grocery are too high, and we're starting to see the burden on family. And unfortunately, the federal government's all too interested in protecting power and politics and putting that over to American people. And that's what we should be focusing on. And unfortunately, this process, I would have done some things differently than Kevin Speaker McCarthy did in terms of a few things. Obviously, we wish more of the appropriations bills had been done, but actually he was headed down the path that was actually agreed to back in January. So I'm a little disappointed that this is brought to a conclusion like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, now you did vote to obviously keep Kevin McCarthy in there, as did all Republicans except for the 8 that ultimately led the way to oust him. So, it is, I think you're right to bring up saying, hey, there were some, pledges made back in January that were broken here, right, including giving members ample time to read bills before votes on the floor. That kind of a promise wasn't kept. Is that reason to oust somebody? Obviously, some would argue that's not enough to get it done. But how do we fix this broken system where, people aren't reading bills? You guys are on vacation for 6 weeks this summer. How does any of that get fixed?
Well, actually, I would push back a little bit. I'm not sure there's too many of the promises that you could ever say that weren't broken, at least the ones that were publicly talked about. Mm-hmm. And so that's a little bit also what it's disappointing about bringing up the motion to vacate. I mean, the only bill at all that ever came up before 72 hours was a continuing resolution that was passed last Saturday, and that was and that's a typical process with your passing legislation that's passed. That didn't go through the Rules Committee that comes to the floor. So I'm not sure that there's a real solid case for that. I think the one thing you could say is that we didn't get all of the appropriations bills done by September 30th. And the thing about it is that hasn't been done since 1996. The House has passed 4 of the 12, and under Speaker McCarthy's organization, we were actually debating on the floor, and a couple of bills got voted down because people either didn't like some of the spending cuts that were in them or other provisions. And so we really, part of the distraction part of this now is that instead of focusing on how do we look at cutting the deficit, how do we look at getting appropriations bills done, we're now 42 days away from when the government runs out of funding again. So we've got to be focused on how do we do that. Instead, our next step is we've got to select a new speaker. Mm-hmm. And so that's going to take a distraction away. And I was supposed to have a committee meeting. Ways and Means was having a committee meeting today to mark up 4 pieces of legislation. That's not going to happen now. So it really slows down some of the progress we were in the midst of making, and of course, nothing's being done about the border.
Yeah, no, absolutely true. That's all true. Ron Estes is joining us, the Kansas 4th District here on KCMO Talk Radio. So how much of this, I mean, knowing the inner workings of D.C. as you do, how much of this can you gather was tied to Matt Gaetz and him being upset with the fact that there is still an ethics investigation into him and some of the allegations around sexual misconduct and things of that nature?
Yeah, I think that's really I think it turned out to be more of a personality issue than actually focused on what was legitimate legislative issues and the things that we needed to be doing to run the country. And it's kind of one of those things that's been bantied about since January, even before that, to some degree, as opposed to let's put our heads down and focus on getting the things done that we need to do. In the meantime, you know, with the personalities that have gotten in the way, we're not talking about, you know, a senator taking a bribe from a foreign country, and the media is not talking about a member of the House pulling a fire alarm to try to stop the funding of the federal government, and Gavin Newsom appointed a California senator who's in Maryland, and the crime in D.C. has gotten so bad now a second member of Congress has been attacked and actually was carjacked a couple of days ago. Hunter Biden's felony gun charge. You know, all of those things aren't being talked about now in the media because this is the story. And so we really need to get back to focusing on the things that's important for the country.
Yeah, that is also true. The media is loving this because they can hype this whole thing up. All right, so now the question is who's going to be Speaker? I mean, that's the other part of this I struggle with. You know, I don't think that there's much of a plan here. So what do you think, Congressman Estes? Who are you hearing as a potential Speaker of the House?
So let me tell you what the process is, and then I'll come back to answer that. So next Tuesday, the Republicans will get together and we'll have candidates, kind of a candidate forum that people will speak that want to run for Speaker and present themselves to the membership to do that. And then Wednesday, the Republican conference will meet and select a Republican nominee. And then we'll go to the floor and vote. I'm sure the Democrats will nominate Hakeem Jeffries as their Speaker nominee. And so members of leadership and others are out talking up, starting to call members and solicit support. And, you know, there's a lot of good leaders on the Republican side. I mean, Steve Scalise is the majority leader, Tom Emmer's the whip, Jim Jordan, you know, chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Patrick McHenry's chairman of Financial Services, Kevin Hearn's chairman of the Republican Study Committee, you know, Lee Stefanik. There's a lot of good people to choose from through that. And so we'll have to see how this dynamic plays out through all of that.
Are you open to any of those people you just listed, or do you have someone that you like?
You know, there's two or three that I think would be better than you know, one or two of the others. But that's, you know, part of that's my personal opinion. Part of that's the issues I think that, you know, are important to work on. And so you know, but we do have a mixture of members in the House. I mean, we have Republican members who come from districts where the Republican registration is 25 points or more higher than the Democrats. And then we have districts that President Biden won by, you know, 10 or 12 or 15 points. And so the issues are different when you're in a Republican district to talk about issues for the primary versus a district where it's really competitive and you actually have to focus on things for the general election. And that makes for a well-rounded discussion of the issues, but sometimes it can be messy as we go through the Democratic process.
That is very true. Ron Estes, 4th District Congressman here in Kansas, serves the entire Wichita region, joining us on KCMO. We appreciate you joining us here on a busy morning for you, Congressman. Thanks so much for the time.
All right, great. Thank you, Pete.
You bet. Ron Estes on KCMO Talk Radio, 913-408-7710. You heard there some of the insights and what's next, candidate forum next Tuesday. And he is right, too, when it comes to you got a lot of people serving a large swath of constituents that have very different issues that matter to them. And that matters as well.